Hi everyone. So I made a bit of a mistake. I have arrived to my manicure appointment 45 minutes early. So I find myself in an area called Saskakempa, which is a very different type of place to the place where I live. And seeing as I have a significant amount of time and I'm in a very different part of Warsaw, I thought, hey, let's take advantage of my misfortune and show you somewhere a little bit different and talk about, I don't know, something on my mind. So one thing that was kind of on my mind this morning, and bear with me because this sounds like a bit of a dark thought, but in reality it's not, at least not for me. And it's on the topic of death, funnily enough. Now, before I go on, I want to say that I'm in no way or shape or form suicidal or anything like that. Do not worry. And also at this point, I'd like to say that if any of what I say is triggering or upsetting, I'll put some numbers in the description below so that you can speak to somebody about it, because I've suffered in the past, I've felt bad in the past, and I've always felt worried about reaching out to people. I just got to say that I have used certain services before in the past and they have been incredibly helpful. I might have talked about using the employee assistance program on this channel. I did that a couple of months ago and I found it to be extremely beneficial to get me through what has been a very difficult start to 2025. So anyway, with that in mind, let's crack on. So why death? Why do I want to talk about that, especially on a day which is so bright and sunny and optimistic? And why, when I'm otherwise in a fairly upbeat and cheerful mood? Well, I mean, as humans, one of the things that we can't do is escape the thought of our own mortality. And I think every single one of us has that dawning realization that our lives will one day end. And I really struggled with that thought when it struck me for the first time when I was in my early teens, I want to say. I must have been about 12 when I started struggling with that concept. And as I've said on my channel before, my family, at least all of my family back then, was fairly religious. I went to church, and so you'd have thought that I would have drawn on that notion of heaven, hell, that sort of thing, to give me a little bit of comfort. And I know that some people do find some comfort in that idea, but for whatever reason, it just never vibed with me. I never felt comforted by the idea of spending an infinite amount of time in this fairly intangible space. I felt that I was struggling with the idea of infinity in general. It just felt too long, which I guess is the whole essence of infinity, I suppose. And I don't know, there was something about it that chilled me to my core. The fact that for an unending amount of time, something was the case after my physical body in this particular realm expired. And I really didn't like that idea whatsoever. I was much more enamored with the thought that perhaps I would be reincarnated. That seemed more, I don't know, pleasant to me. The fact that I would just keep coming back again and again, but without my memories and in a different shape. I mean, I guess that shouldn't be too much of a stretch to see why I would be attracted to that idea. But the fact that I would be infinitely me seemed just awful, just unacceptable for one reason or other. And maybe you're like me, kind of joining these dots right now and thinking, well, yeah, that makes sense because you're trans, and so therefore spending forever in a body that you don't like kind of makes sense. You wouldn't want to do that forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But I hadn't really made that connection with that I'm trans. And perhaps this is one of those little signs that people often talk about and search for in online spaces. You know, tell me what signs did you have that you were trans? But it wasn't so much being in my physical body that terrified me. Just the prospect of infinity in of itself was horrifying. Anyway, the main point that I want to make is that I was terrified. And terrified to the point where I could never countenance actions that would lead to my own death. And I think in a way that fear saved my life, because as hard and as awful as my teenage years were, and they were really bad, it never once occurred to me that I wanted to take my own life, because as bad as things were, I was still alive, and that was better than the alternative, as awful as that was. And it's kind of weird that this terror that would keep me awake through the night, and it did, for years I couldn't sleep. I mean, I obviously slept sometimes, but it really affected my sleep for a long time, because I'd not be able to sleep because I'd be panicking about the concept of death, and then I'd be terrified that if I don't sleep I will die. It was a vicious circle. And I can laugh about it now because it's obviously something I've moved past, but yeah, it was a bad time. It was a really bad time in my head. And yeah, so I got through that, and I want to bring us forwards now to several years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and something changed. Around that point, I was going through a divorce. I was divorcing the person who is now obviously my ex-wife, and that was a really intense, really difficult, really horrible time. Just the whole process of it, just the guilt and shame that I felt over that, the pain that everyone was going through. It was very tangible, and the fact that I was somewhat responsible for that, it made me feel awful about myself. And alongside that, I didn't feel that same sense of fear about death anymore. That's not to say that I welcomed it or that I wanted to do anything about that thought. It's just, I had thoughts where I would be okay if I died then. And I just want to emphasize once again at this point, I'm not suicidal. I never wanted to do anything to create my death kind of actively. It was interesting for me to note that change in attitude. I think I was just tired. I was exhausted. I had this fantasy of just taking a break from life, of checking out for a while. My ideal would be to just blink out of existence for a period, and then to return later, recharged, re-energized, revitalized, and all of the horrors, all of the difficulties, all of the bad stuff were taken care of. But obviously that didn't happen, because that's not how life works. I had to act, I had to push through all of those things. I had to go to the lawyers, I had to go to the courts, I had to do all of the things that you have to do to make a divorce go from a hypothetical to something real. Another part of this fantasy, or kind of, I guess, a subset of that idea, was that I would be, for some reason, forced to stay in hospital for an extended period of time. Maybe I've got a broken leg or something non-life-threatening, where I couldn't move, couldn't do anything. I didn't have to cook or clean. In fact, I couldn't cook or clean. All I could do was just wait. Kind of like a existing version of being out of time in that way that I was dreaming of. And again, it's not like I was self-destructive. It's not like I was gonna jump in front of a car to expedite that dream. But I mean, I was struggling. I needed something to get through this, just the strength to get through this. And at that time I had the support of Carolina. I think I'd already come out to her by then, but everything just felt so overwhelming. I just couldn't. I didn't feel like I could deal with everything, but to my surprise, I did. And so that brings me to today. Why is this on my mind today? I have no idea. I couldn't tell you why I don't feel like this anymore. Maybe the fact that I'm past these things now means that I can look at them and make this video with a certain degree of safety, security. I don't have that same sense of anger, frustration, whatever it was, whatever those feelings were. They've dried up, and so I can just talk about that with a bit of clarity. And I don't think I'm the first person to have to deal with these sorts of thoughts. Talking to Carolina, working with her, I don't know if I call it working, but knowing that I had somebody championing me and comforting me, that really helped. As I said, I used employee assistance programs eventually, but I'd always told myself that I'm strong, I'm a strong person, I can get through this. And maybe that was also one of the reasons why I didn't get help when I feel that I should have done, looking back. Because yeah, you can be strong, but at the same time things can just get too heavy. And I think I was reaching my breaking point. And as I say, I'm past that now. And I like to think that I can recognize those signs a little bit more, which is why I took advantage of the employee assistance program and got some counseling a little while ago. Not because I was desperate then, but because I could feel myself becoming so. Everything was becoming too heavy for me. Politics, work, so much. It was too much. And it doesn't feel like that now, but it did. And so I suppose if you're watching this, and maybe this was my motivation for making this video, is if you feel that it's too much, it's not a shame, it's nothing against you, it's not a sign of weakness to ask for some help. There's a lot of people struggling out there in the world today. I can feel it. So I do hope that if you need to, contact some of the numbers below. Unfortunately, I don't know where you are, who you are, what your circumstances are. So I can only put things for certain contexts or countries. But maybe if you hear this and it resonates and you feel like you share some of these thoughts, then don't just let it sit. Don't worry, I'm not sponsored by BetterHelp or anything like that. I'm not going to segue into an ad or anything. I would hope that a lot of the links that I'm linking to are free to use services, but I don't know. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Once again, I do want to assure you I am fine. Today I am fine. which is why I can talk about these things right now today, because I am so good, I am so fine. I am in a much better place than I was several years ago, that's for damn sure. And yeah, I hope that you are well, whoever you are, wherever you are. And I hope that you take care, and I will see you very, very soon. All the best. Goodbye.